Hello, I'm Mr. Polk, and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'd like to show you how to make homemade pasta dough. To start making the dough, we're going to combine two different types of flours. You could use just AP or whatever flour you have at home, but I like to use a combination of the Typo 00 flour, which is a higher gluten Italian flour, European flour. The 00 means that it's super fine. And then pasta a lot of times likes a semolina. Now semolina, as I use in the pizza unit, can be a little coarse. It can almost look like cornmeal. So I like to buy what's called Durum Patent flour. It's the semolina flour, but it's ground one more time. And then what you're going to do is stir those two together so that you have a nice blend. And this helps give that yellow color and the texture to the pasta. I'm going to show you how to make the pasta today using the traditional well method. So I'm going to take my flour and I'm just going to pour it right on the cutting board or on the sill pad or whatever surface you have. And I'm going to make a well or a volcano. So I'm just going to pull the flour apart and kind of create that volcano. And it's going to need a pretty good area in the middle to hold everything. And then I do want to make sure that I have just a little bit of flour in the middle to keep everything there. Then we're going to put in our ingredients. Everybody has their own little way to make pasta dough. This is one that I like to do. It starts with the liquid ingredients. I like to put in a little bit of olive oil, about a tablespoon. And that was 4 ounces each of the flours. And then I like to put in 3 tablespoons of milk, whole milk, and then eggs. And I prefer, some recipes use egg yolk and then they use a whole egg. Some use the whole egg. I like to use yolk only. And that's because a lot of time in class we have to make our dough on one day and process the next. And if you use the whole egg, you get the reaction with the sulfur in the egg and your dough starts to get either these dark green or black spots. And if you use just the yolk, that doesn't happen. So that's why I like to use just the yolk. It's important because of measuring the liquid that you do get as much of that yolk from the bowl in. Now you just have the egg in the center and you have this kind of mound on the outside. I like to take a fork and start working from the outside in. Okay, try to get some of the flour mixed in with the egg, and it's going to make like a paste. Hopefully you're careful and we don't have a breakdown in the sides. Sometimes you get a breakdown and the egg starts to run. But as you're doing this, at first it doesn't look like a dough at all, but it's going to start to make a paste. And there I got to watch, I'm getting close to the edge. And what I'm going to do now that the paste is kind of thick, I'm just going to sort of start bringing everything in to the middle. All right. Let's do it one last time there just to kind of get that thick paste. Now that I have the paste there, now I'm going to take my dough divider, my bent little bowl scraper, and I'm just going to start working the flour over. I don't want to get in there with my hands because it is super wet and sticky, and any of the moisture that gets on my hands is going to be taken away from the dough. So as I'm doing this, I'm trying to always just put the flour that's not wet on top of the mass of the dough. And you can see now it's really starting to look like a nice little bit of dough. At the beginning, it looks like you have too much liquid or you messed up, or if you're not careful, the egg runs all over the place. Notice with the scraper, I'm able to scrape the board. So now, if you notice, it's starting to look like some dough. So now I can start actually bringing it around and getting it to look pretty good. Alright. Then all this dry stuff, you want to start to incorporate that into the dough, because even though it looks like I just added a lot of dry, there's a lot of wet inside the dough. So now this is where it just depends on the phase of where your dough is at. I'm going to try to start bringing it together into a soft dough. So I'm going to fold it, rotate it, fold it again, and now it's starting to look like something. So what I'd like to do one more time is kind of flatten it out. What I like to do is gather all of this stuff, because some of this is dry, some of this is wet, but it's all part of the dough recipe. And I put that in the middle, and then I fold it up, and now I start to bring it into a nice little disc of dough. So what you want to do, this dough is very different. It does have a couple wet spots, but overall you're going to find that it's fairly dry. So here we go. Now it's looking good. I can start getting all these little pieces up. And now we have to knead it. Now you don't have to knead it as long as a pizza dough, but you want to hit it with your heel turn it 90 degrees, fold it, hit it with your heel again, 90 degrees. You want to do this a couple times until it starts to feel like the gluten's developing and the dough is kind of staying together. You can see now that what looked like a combination of really wet and really dry has really come together into a nice disc of dough. And then 1 or 2 more times, fold it in half, hit it with your heel, fold it in half again. And once you feel pretty good about it, you can wrap it up. Now, because of all the gluten in here, because of the semolina, because of the Typo flour, you definitely don't want to try and work this right now. If you're going to work this by hand and you're going to try and use your rolling pin, it's not going to work. The gluten strands, they're really not developed. They need a rest. So we're going to take some saran wrap and we're going to put our dough in there, wrap it up, and then this is going to go in the refrigerator for at least a half hour. I let it go for a couple hours just to let it relax. But it definitely needs to relax a little bit, otherwise it's going to have a hard time rolling it out. So thanks for cooking with me today, and I can't wait to cook with you again right here in Mr. Polk's kitchen.